It's just past 7:30 p.m. across India, live from New Delhi. You're watching DD India Global. We'll get you top stories from India and the region. I'm Tanvi Taneja. And for news from the rest of the world, I'm joined by my colleague in Washington, D.C., Nick Harper. Hi, Nick.
Hi, Tanvi. It's 10 a.m. here in Washington, D.C. It's 3 in the afternoon across Central Europe. Coming up in the next 30 minutes, the Trump hush money trial draws to a close, with the jury getting ready for deliberations. We'll be live with our correspondent in New York. And America's top diplomat heads to Moldova to bolster support for Ukraine. But first, the headlines.
South Africans vote in what is being seen as the most competitive election since the end of apartheid 30 years ago. It's the penultimate day of campaigning in India's seventh and last phase of polling. Prime Minister Narendra Modi, Congress Chief Mallikarjun Kharge, among others, busy drumming up last-minute support. Israel's national security advisor says fighting in Gaza will go on for 7 more months at least after President Joe Biden hinted an unchanged US policy towards Israel after the Rafah strike. And jurors to begin deliberations in Trump's hush money case as the first ever criminal trial of a former US president reaches its final phase. South Africans are voting in national and provincial elections that could test the ruling African National Congress ANC's 30-year tenure. South Africa's President Cyril Ramaphosa cast his ballot in the Johannesburg township of Soweto. Democratic Alliance leader John Steenhuisen also cast his vote in his hometown of Durban. Former South African President and Umkhonto we Sizwe leader Jacob Zuma cast his vote at his hometown, Nkandla. More than 27 million South Africans are registered to vote across over 23,000 polling stations. Voters will elect 9 provincial legislatures and a new national parliament, which will then choose the country's next president. Inmates in the Pollsmoor maximum security prison were also seen participating in South Africa's general elections. And now we are joined by DD India's Isaac Lukendo, who joins us from Johannesburg, South Africa now. Isaac, hi. How has been the voter turnout where you are, and what are you picking up about the overall voting trend this time around?
Well, at this place that I've been since 7 o'clock in the morning, voter turnout seems to be very good. There's been a steady flow of voters coming in, trickling in since the morning hours until this particular time. We're still seeing more coming in. And I believe that this is because most of them know that voting is still open until 9 p.m. So we've seen a steady flow of voters at this particular station, which has about 1,900 registered voters. Elsewhere, we've had reports from the IEC, the Electoral Commission of South Africa, that things have been going relatively smooth. At 7 a.m., about 93% of the voting stations had been open and voters were casting their ballots, with the exception of a few places in the country. Not so far from here in Alexandra, there was an incident where voting material was late. It came out at about 11 a.m. and so voting there was a bit delayed. But overall, it's been relatively smooth throughout the country. But in terms of voter turnout, we might not know exactly how things have turned out until we get a full report from the IEC, which we are waiting for. But overall mood is that of enthusiasm and eagerness to cast their votes.
Okay. Isaac, what have been the key issues in the campaign as the African National Congress tries to avoid losing its parliamentary majority?
Well, the key issues in this campaign revolve around the fact that South Africa is the most unequal country in the world, according to the World Bank. There are a lot of people who are very rich here, but there are also a lot of people who are very poor. And so you have issues like unemployment, where you have 1 in 3 South Africans looking for a job. You have issues surrounding load shedding that has been a menace to many South Africans in recent years. You have issues with education, housing, even access to water. These have all been issues that have been talked about in some of the campaign rallies that we've been able to listen to. And this, of course, will determine how much of a vote that the ANC, the ruling ANC, gets to get. But opinion polls, many of them to be exact, are indicating that the ANC might not make it over the 50% mark to be able to form a government. And if it does fall below that 50% mark, then it will have to pick a coalition partner amongst the leading contenders in this particular election. So we're talking about the Democratic Alliance, the EFF, and as you mentioned earlier, Mkhonto Sizwe, or MK, which was recently formed and is being led by the former President Jacob Zuma. So it's still anyone's guess about how this election will turn out. And so as these voters are trickling in and the vote counting begins after 9 p.m., we'll begin to get a clearer picture of just how this election will pan out.
Okay, thank you, Isaac. Isaac Lukanda reporting for us from Johannesburg, South Africa. And from the continent of Africa to South America now, Mexico is set to hold its presidential elections on Sunday. The upcoming election is significant as the country will likely elect its first female president. Recent opinion polls have showed female candidates, Claudia Sheinbaum and Xochitl Galvez, leading the polls. Women across Mexico hope that the next president will address issues like equality at the workplace, femicides, and rights for the LGBTQ+ population. On to the United States now. Deliberations are set to begin in Donald Trump's historic hush money case as the first ever criminal trial of a former US president reaches its final phase. My colleague Nick Harper is in Washington, D.C. He takes it forward from me here, gives us more on Trump's trial and other stories making headlines around the world. So, Nick, when can we expect a verdict in Trump's hush money case?
Well, Tambi, it could come as early as today because former US President Donald Trump's hush money trial is reaching its final days as jurors are expected to begin deliberations in just a few hours' time. Before that, though, they'll receive instructions from the judge on the relevant law. Then it could take days, maybe even weeks, for the 12 New Yorkers to reach a verdict which they unanimously agree on in the first criminal trial of a former US president. Trump has pleaded not guilty to 34 charges of falsifying business records to cover up a hush money payment to an adult film star, Stormy Daniels, ahead of the 2016 presidential election. To get more on all this, DD India's Mitch McCann is joining us live from New York City. Mitch, what are we expecting from today's proceedings, and could we see a verdict potentially in the coming hours?
Yes, that's right, Nick. We could see a verdict in the coming hours. This could be a historic day for the United States. Donald Trump, of course, pleaded not guilty to 34 charges of falsifying business records to cover up an alleged affair with the pornography star Stormy Daniels. So this morning, this is the order of business. Judge Merchan will spend an hour, possibly a little longer, speaking to the jurors made up of 7 men and 5 women from here in New York about the instructions they have. He'll talk to them about how they can work together to find a verdict in this case. Then it will be up to those 7 men and 5 women to find a verdict in Donald Trump's case. It could take hours, it could take days, it could even take weeks. It remains to be seen how long the jury will take to find a verdict in this case. Now, one of the interesting points here is that last night Eastern Time here in New York, closing arguments and the court was kept a lot longer than usual. Normally around 5 o'clock Eastern is the end of the day in this trial, but it went to 8 o'clock last night. Now, the reason for that is because it was closing arguments and they didn't want those arguments to spill over to this morning, where jurors may have forgot some of the key details, that they crammed it into one big day. So it could be an historic day here in New York, but it could also take a couple of days or even weeks to find a verdict in this case. Now, one of the key things to focus on here is the defence argument from Donald Trump. He says he had nothing to do with these hush money payments. He did not oversee them. He did not approve them. And Donald Trump's lawyer, Todd Blanche, really took aim at one of the key witnesses for the prosecution yesterday, Michael Cohen, Donald Trump's former lawyer, who he said was the gloat, the greatest liar of all time. So that's something that the defence hopes the juries will take into consideration when they go out to deliberate in a couple of hours' time, Nick.
Mitch, thank you. That was Mitch McCann joining us live from New York City. Well, US actor Robert De Niro slammed the former US President Donald Trump on Tuesday and called him a clown who is bent on destroying American democracy. De Niro made the comments outside the New York City courtroom where the Republican presidential candidate's hush money trial is being held.
When Trump ran in 2016, it was like a joke. This buffoon running for president. No, never could happen. We'd forgotten the lessons of history that showed us other clowns who weren't taken seriously until they became vicious dictators.
US Secretary of State Anthony Blinken is in Moldova. He's just met with the president, Mayor Sandu, and other senior officials. It's the first stop on a brief European tour where the top US diplomat will aim to solidify Western support for Ukraine across NATO allies and neighbouring countries. Meanwhile, Sweden has announced military aid worth $1.3 billion to Ukraine, its biggest package so far, to aid in its conflict against Russia. The Swedish defence minister said the package would help strengthen Ukraine's air defences. It includes Saab's airborne surveillance and control 890 aircraft. Last week, Sweden agreed on sending additional military support to Ukraine worth $7.1 billion over a period of 3 years. In Ukraine itself, the military says it shot down 13 out of 14 drones launched by Russia in an overnight attack. Drone debris damaged power lines in central Kirovohrad region, and the attack triggered a defense mechanism that cut power to some localities. The Ukrainian Air Force also shot down 11 drones over the Mykolaiv region. Meanwhile, Russia's defense ministry has said planes from the Black Sea Fleet have destroyed 2 Ukrainian Crimea-bound sea drones in the northwestern part of the Black Sea. Russia has said that they can cope with the European Union ban on imports of its liquefied natural gas, but it would lead to higher prices for European consumers and losses for EU companies. The EU is considering a ban on the transshipment of Russian LNG as part of a 14th package of sanctions against Moscow. The new sanctions also prohibit EU ports from handling Russian liquid gas shipments to non-EU states, as well as tightening existing EU restrictions on Russian aviation. To Israel now, where the National Security Advisor has said fighting in Gaza will go on for 7 more months at least, as military operations intensify on the ground. The United States said on Tuesday that it did not consider Israel's attacks on Rafah a major ground operation that crossed any red lines. US President Joe Biden said that he has no plans to change his Israel policy, but is not turning a blind eye to the plight of civilians in Gaza. Well, in a 5th incident since December, another volcano has erupted in southwestern Iceland, taking place on Wednesday. The new eruption happened as another one on the Reykjanes Peninsula recently ended. Local officials had warned of the risk earlier, as studies showed magma accumulation underground. Well, exciting news for any fans of the Moana Disney movie. The company has released a new teaser trailer for the upcoming sequel. Moana 2 is likely to be released later this year, towards the back end of November. It's a sequel that's arriving 8 years after the Oscar-nominated original film. In the sequel, Moana receives an unexpected call from her wayfinding ancestors. Another journey into dangerous waters looks set to take place in the distant seas of Oceania, all of which is likely to mesmerise audiences once again. Potentially another big hit for the studio. certainly be checking out the sequel. Tanvi, that's it from me here in Washington. Handing it back to you in the studio.
Thank you, Nick. Have a great day ahead. Nick Harper joining us all from Washington, D.C. Still to come on this edition of DD India Global. North Korea sends balloons carrying trash, excrement to the south. Seoul terms the act base and dangerous. And in some respite from the searing heat wave, India Meteorological Department forecasts the arrival of the southwest monsoon in Kerala in the next 24 hours. We just don't bring you the news as it unfolds. We get to the heart of the matter.
We don't just present facts, we demystify complex social, political and economic events.
We break stories that shape the world's present and future because you deserve the truth.
I am Tanvi Taneja from New Delhi.
I'm Ollie Barrett from London.
I'm Nick Harper from Washington, D.C.
Join us on DD India Global Monday to Friday at these times.
You're watching DD India Global. Welcome back. I am Tanvi Taneja. Now, 2024, as we are seeing, it's not just an election year, it's perhaps the election year. So, as we told you, South Africa is heading to polls and so is Mexico, and United States of America will also go to polls in the later part of this year. And now we know that we are in the final leg of India's elections. So India is all set to vote for the 7th and the final phase of general elections on June the 1st. 57 constituencies across 8 states and union territories will vote on Saturday. Fate of 904 candidates will be decided in this phase. 13 seats each in Uttar Pradesh and Punjab, 9 in West Bengal, 8 in Bihar, 6 in Odisha, 4 in Himachal Pradesh, 3 in Jharkhand and 1 seat in the union territory of Chandigarh will go to polls in the 7th phase. Campaigning for the final phase of Lok Sabha elections in India has reached its peak with just 3 days left for polling now. Senior BJP leader and Prime Minister Narendra Modi held a public rally in West Bengal today. He said that the TMC, Trinamool Congress, is openly violating the ideals of Indian Constitution. TMC granted OBC status to the entire Muslim community, thereby transferring reservations meant for SCs, STs and OBCs, that are the backward classes of India. That's what the Prime Minister alleged. Prime Minister Narendra Modi also held a rally in the state of Odisha today. He said that the BJD left no chance to loot mineral wealth, but it was the BJP that created District Mineral Foundation to stop this, he said. Another BJP leader and Home Minister Amit Shah held a rally in Uttar Pradesh's Maharajganj, Devariya and Balia today. Slamming the opposition, Amit Shah said that Rahul Gandhi and Akhilesh Yadav will hold a press conference on June the 4th and say that they lost the elections due to the faulty electronic voting machines. BJP National President JP Nadda held a roadshow at Godda in Devghar, Jharkhand today as well. Top leaders of opposition parties are also making a last-ditch attempt to woo voters in their favour. Congress Party's National President Mallikarjun Kharge held rallies in the eastern Indian state of Odisha. Congress General Secretary Priyanka Gandhi Vadra is on a campaign trail in the northern Indian state of Himachal Pradesh. She held a rally in Kullu today. And West Bengal Chief Minister and TMC leader Mamata Banerjee had attended a public meeting in 24 South Parganas today. Now, amid the election cacophony, let us take you on a journey through time as we delve into the story of a city's beloved icon, the Calcutta tram. Once the pride of the streets, the historic mode of transportation is now facing neglect and decline. DD India's Dibyendu Mondal filed this report from Kolkata.
This is the city of joy. This is Kolkata. What you're witnessing behind me is centuries old history of the colonial periods. Let me take you inside the history of the Calcutta trams.
This is a living history, the Calcutta Tramways. Since its inception in 1873 during the British colonial era, the Calcutta Tram has been an integral part of the city's landscape, connecting neighborhoods and ferrying generations of Kolkatans through its iconic carriages. Crawling through the crowded streets of Kolkata, the Calcutta Tram is a story of neglect. It seems it has frozen in time. The wooden seats, the wooden flooring and the huge fans showcases the dilapidated conditions of the tram. It highlights the neglect it faced over years.
এখন অবস্থা খুবই খারাপ এই সরকার আসার পর থেকে পুরো ট্রাম কোম্পানিটা বসিয়ে দিয়েছে একদম সব ট্রাম যতগুলো ডিপো ছিল সব করে শেষ হয়ে গেছে একদম সব বিক্রি করে দিয়েছে যাই হোক করেছে করে যাই না এখন ট্রাম 5টা 6টা ট্রাম ডিপো ছিল সব ডিপো বন্ধ হয়ে গেছে
Lack of maintenance, aging infrastructure and changing commuter preferences have led to a decline in the tram's popularity and efficiency. But this still continues to be the cheapest mode of transport in Kolkata.
খুবই কম চড়ি অপশন পেলে মাঝে সাঝে খুব রেয়ার ওটি ট্রেনে এই ট্রামে আর ম্যাক্সিমাম রুটই তো বন্ধ হয়ে গেছে পসিবলি 2টো না 3টে রুট আর চলছে এটা আমাদের ঐতিহ্য কলকাতার আর কি সেটাই মেইনটেইন করছে এখনো
The neglect of the tram system has not only impacted its functionality but also its cultural significance. Now, as Kolkata marches towards the future, the fate of its beloved tram hangs in the balance. Will it continue to be a relic of the past, or will efforts be made to revive and preserve this cherished piece of the city's history? Only time will tell.
And the people of Kolkata really wants this heritage tram to be preserved and calls for a renovation of this heritage of the colonial era to be preserved and presented to the people for a better transport facility of the city. With camera person PK, this is Divyendu Mondal from Kolkata in West Bengal for DD India.
And on to some weather updates from India now. The country is witnessing extreme heat across the north. Severe heat wave has gripped the northern states of Delhi, Punjab, Haryana, Uttar Pradesh and Rajasthan for the past few days. Temperatures in India's capital surged to a record-breaking 52.3 degrees Celsius on Wednesday noon. According to the India Meteorological Department, severe heat waves are due to a combination of factors including the El Niño effect and the anticyclonic circulation. But 2 hours after Delhi recorded the country's highest ever temperature at 52.3 degrees Celsius, the national capital received light showers, bringing some respite from the extreme heat. Drizzles were also witnessed in neighbouring Noida. The India Meteorological Department on Wednesday said that conditions were becoming increasingly favourable for the onset of the southwest monsoon over Kerala. Monsoon is set to hit the southern Indian state of Kerala in the next 24 hours. And next we take a look at other stories making news around the world. South Korean residents got scared about suspicious balloons dropping in front of their homes and shops today. Later, an inspection by explosive experts revealed that the balloons were laden with trash and excrement. These had been sent by North Korea as a gift of sincerity, allegedly, across their borders. South Korea later termed this act as base and dangerous. Amazon's request to dismiss a Federal Trade Commission lawsuit has been rejected by a U.S. judge. Filed in June last year, the lawsuit accused the retailer of deceptive practices, forcing customers into enrolling or renewing their Prime subscription without consent. Junior doctors in England will strike for 5 days ahead of UK's July 4th election as part of a long-running dispute over pay. This will be the 11th walkout by junior doctors after their first strike in March last year. Amid climate change impacting biodiversity worldwide, a Polish zoo has some good news to share. A black lemur pair has given birth to twins, one boy and another girl, in a Warsaw zoo. Black lemurs are natives to Madagascar and climate change has affected their population drastically. This recent birth has brought the number of black lemurs to 6, each having different characteristic traits from the other. Interestingly, the zoo has organized a competition to choose names for these 2 adorable babies. So that's all for this edition of DD India Global. Do let us know your thoughts on the news of the day. You can connect with us on our different social media handles at DD India Live. And for those on the go, you can get all the latest news and updates from our DD India mobile app. The app is available on both Android and iOS platforms. So we'll be back with more news as it breaks here on DD India. I'm Tanvi Taneja from my entire team in New Delhi. Thank you for watching. Namaskar.